Resident Evil 5. Ever since the first trailer in 2005, Resident Evil 5 has been one of the most anticipated games for both Xbox 360 and PS3. Now that it's upon us, does it really live up to the hype? But before I sat down and got my teeth stuck into the game, I had a chance to pick the brains of the game's producer, Masachika Kawata. With the hugely commercial and critical success of Resident Evil 4, how difficult was it to follow this with Resident Evil 5? And was there pressure to create a different style of game?
Naturally, all of the team felt huge pressure from Resident Evil 4. However, we didn't want to change the style of gameplay, so we didn't change that much for Resident Evil 5. But as we were working with a next-generation console, we wanted to come up with something new. So online co-op felt like a natural progression, mainly because we wanted Resident Evil 5 players to experience the game with people from all around the world.
I owe you one!
With regards to the storyline, we felt the story in Resident Evil 4 was a little bit diverted and didn't really progress or advance. So with Resident Evil 5, we've resurrected the popular character Wesker.
So, you've made it this far.
To enhance the storyline so it advances forward at a healthier pace, whilst developing more on the characters' backstories.
With the improved hardware of Xbox 360 and PS3, what features were you able to include that were not possible with Res 4?
Obviously, one of the main features was graphics, especially as we had use of Hollywood studios to create the CG movies. So this is just not a game, as it can be more comparable to some of the latest special effects blockbusters.
Are there any current gen titles that have influenced Resident Evil 5?
During the production of Resident Evil 5, we looked at many third-person shooters, particularly Gears of War 2 on the Xbox 360, which influenced the Resident Evil 5 team to create many new elements in the game.
Now that much of Res 5 takes place in the scorching African sunlight, what new elements have been brought in to keep that same level of tension and fear?
Well, traditionally the Resident Evil series used the darkness to appeal to the gamers' imaginations, so they can't really see what's lurking around the next corner. But Resident Evil 4 changed that direction and showed gamers that when they're attacked by a mass of enemies, you get a different sense of fear. So we extended that horror in Resident Evil 5, so when you're outnumbered by a mass of enemies, it's a different tension altogether. Because in the daylight, you can see what you're up against, creating a sense of panic horror.
The gap between Resident Evil 4 and 5 has been about 4 years. Can we expect the same amount of time until Resident Evil 6?
We haven't decided whether we're going to make Resident Evil 6 yet, but if we do, it could take anywhere up to 8 years, but hopefully only 4.
The game takes place roughly 10 years after the events of the original Resident Evil, and you're reunited with Resident Evil veteran Chris Redfield, who is now a member of a group known as Bioterrorism Security Assessment Alliance, or BSAA for short. And in true Resident Evil style, you've been sent to investigate a mysterious incident in the African desert. The first thing you'll notice about the game is the stunning graphics. The game implements various lighting effects with all different African environments, which graphically puts the game up there with the likes of Killzone 2 and Gears of War. One of the key features of the game is the introduction of the character Shiva Alamar, who assists Chris throughout the game. If playing on your own, Shiva will be AI controlled, which is great, but be sure you look after her, as if she dies, it's game over for the both of you. The game also has a fresh new variety of enemies who all possess a broad range of melee weapons from wrenches to spades. And towards the latter levels, gun ownership, with the one aim of causing Shiva an excessive amount of pain, which is leaps and bounds beyond the stumbling zombies from the first 3 games. The best additions to Resident Evil 5 is the Mercenaries minigame, which is unlocked once you complete the game. The premise is really simple as you play as either Chris, Shiva, Jill or Wesker and must kill as many enemies to gain points in a certain amount of time in order to unlock some awesome bonuses. It's really simple and adds lots of extra gameplay once you've completed the main game. After playing Resi 5 through to the end, I'd say it's a great game, but it's not what I was expecting from a Resident Evil title. Like Killzone 2, it looks amazing, and that's one of the reasons you'll love it, but graphics aren't everything, as I expect to be scared out of my skin with a Resident Evil game, which wasn't the case here. It just felt like another Gears of War style game, which is fine if you're new to the series, but not if you're an old hand.